I only need a sergeant really to do three things. If I could have a sergeant that can just do three things, I would like those three things to be lead by personal example, inspect, and train, and then just master those three things. If we could have all of our sergeants and corporals just lead, inspect, and train, all of our units would be much stronger.
Hello, fellow leaders, and welcome to another episode of the Military Leader Podcast, bringing you conversations with today's most successful leaders. I am Andrew Stedman, back from a few weeks off in Glacier National Park with the family. You have got to check that place out and put it on your bucket list. It is beautiful out there with tons to do. Make your way up to Montana sometime and visit Glacier. I'm glad to be back with you and hope you enjoyed the last 3 bonus episodes on luck and how it influences the trajectory of your career. I appreciate Steve Leonard and Nate Finney for contributing their guest posts on the site and for adding to the conversation on the fickle nature of luck, timing, networks, and opportunities in the military. You can find those guest posts, this episode, and many, many other posts on leadership, leader development, and productivity, so many other topics there too, all at themilitaryleader.com. Check out the posts, resources, insight, and then connect on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and join the conversation that's happening every day on leadership. I got to tell you, I am humbled by all the people who have left ratings and reviews on iTunes. Over 73 of you have left 5-star ratings and about a dozen have left positive reviews, which I truly appreciate. I'm so glad the podcast hits home for you and provides value. If you haven't left a rating on iTunes, I invite you to do so if the show is helping you grow as a leader. This week, I am honored to share my conversation with retired Command Sergeant Major Scott Schroeder. People who have worked with Command Sergeant Major Schroeder know that he is a soldier's soldier. His 34 years in the Army span from his Germany days to his impact as the Command Sergeant Major of U.S. Army Forces Command, a 4-star command of over 750,000 active duty, Guard, and Reserve component soldiers. In this chat, Command Sergeant Major Schroeder shares the story from the beginning of his career, where he survived UCMJ and then re-enlisted to become an infantryman. Through varying leadership positions and multiple echelons, Command Sergeant Major Schroeder grew into the iconic NCO leader that the Army is designed to grow. He is a humble leader who always respected the authority of his commander, but wasn't afraid to offer advice, challenge assumptions, and mentor officers at every level. He is passionate about reclaiming the role of the NCO and advises that NCOs should leverage the authority and responsibility inherent in their rank. Though he retired last year, his transition to civilian life hasn't stopped him from influencing the Army. He stays tightly connected to his Army network and is putting to paper his well-developed thoughts on the Army leadership, which will likely find their way to bookshelves before too long. Regardless of whether you are an officer or an NCO, infantryman or cook, Command Sergeant Major Schroeder's insight will make you a better leader. I'm so thankful he took the time to have this chat for the Military Leader audience, and I'm proud to bring you my conversation with Command Sergeant Major Scott Schroeder. Command Sergeant Major Schroeder, good morning, and how are you?
I'm doing great, and thanks for asking me to participate. It's an honor.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. I'm excited to chat with you. I know the audience will be too, and so I want to throw a question out to you to start with. I'd like to ask you about a crucible moment, a significant moment in your career that shaped you into who you are today.
Well, there's I don't know if there's a single moment in my career that shaped me. I think it's moments of things that happen across my career that shaped me, but I can think of a couple right off that are like polar opposites and may surprise some people. Early in my career, I was an electronics mechanic serving in Germany, and right when it was about time for me I was in my re-enlistment window, and I was facing the commander for UCMJ, and I had gotten we were in a remote site, so to be able to get any vehicles registered, we had to travel a couple hours, and so I was taking the trash out one day, and in the dumpster I saw there were some license plates in there, and so I had an idea. And I said, well, I could save a lot of time if I just put these on the car and
Right.
and I can drive. So I was facing UCMJ for driving an unregistered, uninsured vehicle with stolen plates on it.
Oh no.
And so I was in my window, and so I ended up going down and to go to where the commander was, the detachment commander. They were almost an hour away, so I had to ride in the truck down there and go face the commander. And he did two things with me. The first meeting was my reenlistment counseling. So he was asking me what my plans were and what I was going to do, and basically I told him, well, I'm not exactly sure, sir. I'm considering reenlisting. I really want to, and I'd like to reclassify, but it kind of depends on how our next session goes.
Right.
And so when I went in for the next, then we transitioned to the UCMJ, and he gave me an Article 15, but he gave me a verbal admonishment, and he did not take my rank, and so I mean I took that with me, and I thought of that commander a lot throughout my entire career, even up in when I was thinking about my retiring as a Force Comm Sergeant Major. Almost 30 years before that, I was in an office facing UCMJ in elimination, or at least being forced out of the Army, and a commander saw some potential. My leaders saw some potential in me, and they did not put me in a position where I was forced out of the service, and I would have understood it had I been forced out. I mean, I would have understood it, and I would have had no ill will against the Army or the commanders. But what that did for me was a couple things. It taught me don't give your authority away. That's something that I talk to young leaders about. I would talk to young leaders about all the time. Don't give your authority away, and the same thing in disciplining troopers as the discretion you would use on a combat operation. Only use the munitions that you need to get the desired effect on the target. So why use a Hellfire missile when a 9mm round will do?
Yeah, proportionality, right?
That's right. And then corrective training, and the importance of corrective training and understanding how to apply corrective training. And I was a big proponent of corrective training at every level after that. But it does take time. I mean, you have to be able to don't give your authority, for especially non-commissioned officers, don't give your authority away, and to impose corrective training on soldiers means that you have to invest your time in them. And so that's both positive and negative.
If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you about that, because it's very relevant for me right now, and there are conversations all over the Army, right? I mean, every day about what threshold of behavior is acceptable for continued service. I mean, as you have sat in many UCMJ hearings and ARC 15 hearings since that time back in Germany, what has been your advice to commanders when looking at a soldier who has fallen off the track, and what the potential consequences be? What threshold is unacceptable for continued service?
Well, there's certainly some that are. I mean, I would say when there's a trend, and it's a trend over time. We also have to look at leaders too to see what interventions have we taken to help that soldier. If the soldier's not just responding to corrective training or any other punishments, I mean, certainly there are certain things that cannot be tolerated. But I think, look, we make it a lot of times. We take misconduct personal, and we can't take it personal, and we can't make punishment personal. It's okay to be, it's okay to be passionate, but it's not okay to make things personal. And so I would say it's got to be fair, but it's not always equal. Military justice needs to be fair, but it doesn't always need to be equally applied because it should be based on an individual. And none of all those decisions are really tough. I understand that, especially for commanders, because and so I would say receive as much input and then make the decision based on regulations, the soldier performance, past performance, and potential for the future, and what the manual of court martial says. I would look at those, and then it's tough, exercising judicial restraint, not going for the max all the time. And then the other thing I would also say there is too often when seeking an administrative separation, read what each one of those characterizations of service reads, because I've found that we often go for those that are higher when we should be looking at the totality of an individual service as opposed to a point in time, a single point in time. And so, and what's the effect that we're trying to achieve in the end?
Yeah, that effect is a conversation we have here, particularly with DUIs. We ask, you look at the soldier. In fact, here in the unit I'm in now, we bring the chain of command comes in to the brigade commander, and we have a chat about it, and we say, what does this really mean for the soldier and but for the unit? What effect will this DUI have on the rest of the formation, be it the squad, the platoon, or company? And then if that soldier is allowed to continue to serve, what message does that send? So we talk about that a lot, how that will affect the continued climate and really the culture of the Army. And at one point, drugs were, someone could survive multiple drug offenses. I mean, if you probably recall from your time in the Army when that might have been the case, but now it's almost always an immediate separation. And at some point, other offenses might be completely unacceptable. DUI might be one of them. But yeah, we have a lot of talk about how it will affect the unit if this person is continues to serve
without any repercussions. I'll tell you one of the things that I did when I was at the battalion level, and talk about corrective training. I would see companies bringing their entire unit in because one person got a DUI. I didn't really care for that. Mass punishment. I've never been a big fan of mass punishment for a single individual's indiscretion. So one of the things I did at the battalion level was, and we didn't run this through the legal officer or anything, but it was okay, because when it got adopted by the brigade, the legal team looked at it and it had no problem with it. We did corrective training, and anybody that was involved in an alcohol-related incident. So this wasn't just DUI. This was any alcohol-related incident that was a negative. So if you and I were out and I had been drinking and somehow we got in a fight, you might get caught up in this depending on, what your circumstance was, what your participation was, or if there was a DUI and I was driving and you didn't get the DUI, but you were with me.
Yeah, maybe let it happen.
You were there. So you're part of, you would come in and you would fall under, we had an alcohol response team. And this was and so you would come in and I would counsel everybody that if it was an SIR that came up to the battalion and we had troopers that were involved in alcohol related incidents, you would come up with your leadership, and you would get counseled by myself, and you would get integrated into the alcohol response team. And that was you were on, I think we did, it was either, I think it was 30 days. I think we did 30 days. You put on the call out roster. So the next SIR for any alcohol related incident, the phone call went from the CQ, or the staff duty officer, to the battalion commander, myself, and then we alerted everybody on the alcohol response team. And they had just like a recall. They
like
had
a recall,
2
right?
hours, 2 hours no notice, and they would have to be there in uniform. And they would come in uniform, and they would report, and they would integrate the new member into the alcohol response team, and they would help in writing the SIR for the event. And then they would they would help with the AAR and how it could be prevented. And that meant that for 30 days, they had to stay within 2 hours. They had to be ready to go within 2 hours. They also had to be in uniform, and they also couldn't show up intoxicated. And so that had to regulate some of their behavior. I would tell you that had a huge impact on the number of alcohol-related incidents we had in the organization. And so it just took a little bit of time, and it was just a program. And once it got going, it was going. And I believe it worked. The commander believed it worked, and it seemed to work good enough for the brigade to adopt it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. That is great. I completely derailed you off the first question. I think you had another experience you wanted to share.
Yeah, I had a couple, and so that was the time that it was about time for me to reenlist. So one of the things I did when I reenlisted for a new MOS, because I mean the MOS I was in was being phased out. So I reenlisted from being an air defender, like a missile mechanic, to infantry.
All right.
So I went through I went through AIT, which was really basic training again, and AIT, and then I got assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, and I showed up to the 82nd just out of AIT for infantry, and finally got down to the company after going through the replacement, and the unit was in the field, and I'm checking in with the training room NCO, and I'm giving him all my stuff, and he starts asking me, what schools have you been to? And I tell him some of them, and I said, I told him I had been to, it was PLDC at the time, and I had been to a master fitness, MTT, and there were a whole bunch of courses that didn't apply, so it didn't really make any difference. And he asked me what I wanted to, if there was any schools I wanted to attend. I said, well, I don't know, what's out there? And he told me, well, we got Recondo, we got the Machine Gun Leaders course, which is really good that you could go to, and then there's Ranger School. I said, oh, well, what do you got to do to go to Ranger School? They said, well, he said, well, you go down and you take a PT test, and if you pass the PT test, they integrate you into the Order Merit List. And so I'm a brand new sergeant, E5, because transitioning, I was an E4P. I transitioned, I got promoted to E5, or sergeant. And so the unit was in the field, so the PT test was coming up, so I went down and took the PT test. And it ended up 6 weeks after I reclassified from air defense, I was in Ranger School.
That's great.
And it wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
So I tell people it wasn't that hard. I had no bad habits. I just did what the RIs told me, and I was reasonably fit. I took that, and I look at a bunch of our troopers that don't challenge themselves. They may not go to a school because it might be hard. They might not compete for EIB or EFMB or other type challenges because of a fear of failure. And we can't have a fear of failure, because that's where we learn, right at the cusp of success and failure is where you learn the most. And we learn more from our failures than we do from oftentimes than our successes. I don't know if I was just watching a movie with Bobby Jones, and Bobby Jones said, I never learned anything from a tournament that I won. I think that's that's something that everybody should take on. Is don't be afraid to fail. We fail when we don't try.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just signed I just signed paperwork, in fact, yesterday for we're sending a soldier right back to Master Gunner School. He got 2/3 of the way through, and then just hit a block that he wasn't as practiced on and hadn't studied as much, and he didn't pass the test. And so he came back and he studied it, and getting back after it, we're going to send him back. So he gets that opportunity again. But he's the best. He's the person who knows the best about the course right now, and probably has the best chance of getting through.
Yeah, and I think a lot of cases having those type of courses that unit programs. What are our unit programs that help with success in those critical schools? For example, Jump Master could be one, Master Gunner could be one. Those things. What are we doing inside our organizations to help individuals prepare? I always thought that EIB, EFMB, Master Gunner, Ranger. I didn't think we needed to teach people how to patrol if we were patrolling in the unit well. But one of the things I did for Ranger, and we had a lot of success, especially at the company when I was a first sergeant, at the company level and at the battalion level, was 50% of the people, the soldiers that go to Ranger school, they don't get into Ranger school. It's really a low failure rate once you get through all the prereqs. If you can do PT, if you can foot march, if you can land nav, those are the big. That's what sends people back. It was so frustrating for me at all levels to spend the money to send somebody to school to fail a PT test.
So I want to transition for a second here and talk about the role of the NCO today. You've got a great perspective on it, and some folks say that it's changed. Some folks, mention how the officers are maybe taking on a little too much of the responsibility, and the NCOs aren't quite what they used to. But I want to get your thoughts on the role of the NCO and how and if it does need to change.
I don't think the role of the NCO by definition has changed. Just read. I don't think enough people read Army Regulation 600-20. If you're a leader at any level, but especially at the company level and above, if you don't have a copy of Army Regulation 600-20 on the corner of your desk someplace, or if you're digital in the corner of your computer, we need to be able to read it. Now, in Chapter 2, it describes what the role of the non-commissioned officer is, and so I haven't seen that change. I do believe with the addition of new technology and increased capabilities at all levels, it has expanded some. And I'll tell you, a company CP today has much more capability than a battalion TOC did when I was a battalion CSM. Isn't that something? We had less capability at the battalion level in 2003 than company commanders do now, and they don't have any more people to try to use that capability. And then there are some things with counterinsurgency operations and the lack of State Department reps in theater that's created gaps at different levels where we ended up having assistant division commanders and XOs at all levels kind of fill in the gap, working counterinsurgency type things like so that created a gap where NCOs had to in some cases go in and fill, and then in a lot of cases we have officers that are overseeing programs that didn't exist in the past, and it's created other gaps. But that's why I think that model that you were talking about is so important, because we don't focus NCOs on always what they need to be focused on, and there's nothing that tells them, hey, if you don't do anything else, these are the things I need you to do.
Yeah, why don't you explain that a little bit, because you sent it to me this week, and I think it's brilliant because it's distilling your thoughts about the role of the NCO and leadership over the course of your career into an incredibly simple model that we'll share with the audience at some point. But why don't you pick out a couple of those and go into detail about how you see that at each echelon?
Right. So in 600-20, it clearly states that non-commissioned officer are responsible for planning, conducting day-to-day unit operations within the policies and directives, and we train soldiers, crews, and teams, and then what other responsibilities that the commander defines to them. And so what I did is, and what I've said for a long time is, I only need a sergeant really to do three things. If I could just get, when they come out of the basic leader course, if I could have a sergeant that can just do three things, I would like those three things to be: lead by personal example, inspect, and train. And then just master those three things. If we could have all of our sergeants and corporals just lead, inspect, and train, all of our units would be much stronger. And then you master that, and then the next step is staff sergeant. And I'm specifically talking about staff sergeants who are squad leaders or section sergeants, who are by definition, are the only enlisted leader in a soldier's chain of command. So by virtue of that, they have to be able to plan. And they plan using the troop leading procedures. They need to be able to track and execute. And so came up with 3 words for each level, and 3 things for them to focus on and master at each level. And then we put that against how we measure units, and we measure units by the USR. And USR is a function of really personnel, equipment, and training. And we put those together and just, here's the things at each level that if you don't do anything else, focus on these things, 3 things, these things here. And that's basically the model.
Yeah. So E5, lead by personal example, inspect, and train. Right.
Right.
And then for E6s again?
So for staff sergeant, plan, track, execute. Sergeant's first class, they supervise, integrate, and coordinate. Have first sergeants that manage, mentor, and develop, and forecast. Sergeant's major, so at the operations sergeant major level, they plan, synchronize, and resource. And command sergeant's major, shape, influence, and drive organizations.
Gosh, I'm thinking up and down the NCO chain there, and how the command sergeant major and I talk. We talk about we have discussions about a lot of the challenges that are existing at multiple levels in the organization. But I think you're onto something there. If we can learn to accept the responsibility, exercise the authority that's given at the level, and do your role, then that would alleviate having to reach down from higher levels to tweak, or to get involved in the body composition program, or get involved in a personnel readiness, or or whatever the case is.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that so the role has I don't believe the role's changed. I believe we need to be able to define it better. Instead, I think we get caught up in trying to knock down 25-meter targets all the time, and we don't have the ability at all levels to step back and identify what's important, what are key, what are the most important things we want you to do, and then everybody has to understand that. So that requires some conversation. And I will tell you, back when I was growing up, the Army used to say the squad leader is the hardest job in the Army. But I will tell you right now, today, or at least last year, the hardest and most complex leadership positions in the Army are at the company, troop, and battery level. And I'll tell you where I believe we're at the greatest risk, though, is at the platoon level of leadership. And so I think there's a couple things that have caused the role of the NCO to change a little bit, or the dynamic of the NCO to change a little bit. We still have but don't get me wrong, we still have great non-commissioned officers that are. Our Army today is 10 times better than it was when I joined the Army. I'm just telling you. And we have strong non-commissioned officers, and I mean, they come from the soldiers. I mean, they come from the ranks, and so we have great soldiers. There are some things that have changed that have caused the dynamics to change a little bit. Also, other changes come from asking NCOs to have broader experience bases, and some of that's good, and some of it's not so good. And then we've merged NCOs, and we've merged MOSs at lower levels. So what I mean by merging, I mean, we've taken some of our technical MOSs, some of our logistics MOSs, and merged them at lower levels, where we used to merge them at a Master Sergeant level. Now, in some cases, we're merging them at Sergeant First Class and even Staff Sergeant level. And we've done that. What it has done is made HRC's job of managing the NCO population a little bit easier, but it's robbed NCOs and commanders of NCOs that have a depth of knowledge and experience. And so where I was, as I was growing up in the Army, after I transitioned to infantry, I was in a light infantry unit my whole life, and I felt pretty comfortable with dismounting, mounted patrolling, very, very comfortable with it. And I believe that our commanders, I believe you as a commander, you rely on your non-commissioned officers for the depth of knowledge and experience in the unit that you're in right now. And if different people require different periods of time to develop, and so I think that we got to stop moving people across all different types of formations, and I tried to work that, and tried to work with some of the centers of excellence on, how are we managing the movement of NCOs through different types of formations to develop them. And depth of knowledge and experience is important. We all often talk about out of the box thinking, right? And so we had a speaker come in a couple of years ago, and she was talking about out of the box thinking. It's not that we want people to think out of the box. What we want people to do is know the box so well that they can reshape it to meet their needs. And that's nothing more than having a depth of knowledge and understanding of your unit, its equipment, its mission, and its capabilities, and being able to adjust, understand the fundamentals. And that's called mastery.
Yeah. There's a personal drive that it takes to reach that level too. I mean, you mentioned you came in and you were fired up, just promoted E5, and you said, okay, what's the next challenge? Ranger school. Okay, I'll go. We'll get after it. But that was that initiative, and that motivation was coming, from within you. That you had taken ownership of your own professional development and your own competence and your own path. How do we distill that in, or instill that really in the formation in a new soldier? When do they get that? When do we expect them to, on their own, go and start learning medical skills and commo skills and weapon skills on their own? When do we expect the person to take charge of his own fitness to the point where you don't have to tell them anymore? There's that transition period somewhere in the first few years. I think we expect it to happen.
I don't think they need to do it on their own, because and maybe I went to Ranger School because, and I said, oh, I'll go. I'm not sure I was so smart. I mean, if I would have known what the odds were of me passing that course. But what happened after I came back from Ranger School was I also knew that I did not know everything about my MOS or my craft. And so, I had a fire team, and I worked with that fire team, and we worked together to learn everything we could about every weapon system we had, how to place it into operation, and just the basics, the fundamentals of our MOS. And we had things like the skill qualification test, so not only PT test but SQT. And I would say some people are going to go out and do extra work on their own, but I think we need to spend more time in teams learning and developing.
Well, there's that drive, it's the, there's three soldiers sitting around, and one of them are, there's a threshold. It feels like there's like an ownership of the profession where one or all of them say, hey guys, we get, maybe it is a fired up team leader that inspires them, or a squad leader. But we use dry fire as an example. When soldiers start coming to NCOs in the armor and saying, hey, can I draw my weapon? I want to go dry fire out, on the side of the company area here, because we got a little bit of time. That's when you've got a professional who's taken charge of his own, of his own, competency, his own capability.
That's right. We got to recognize that. We have to recognize them. I think oftentimes we recognize and spend time with troopers that where we were having the early discussion on corrective training and those that are doing things that sometimes the troopers that are doing bad things get more attention than the troopers that are doing great things, and we need to be able to recognize excellence, and we need to promote those. We need to promote those individuals, and we promote them not just by rank, but promote them by awards, promote them by recognition, and giving them, letting everybody see them, and do it in front of people too, so everybody knows, hey, this is positive behavior. We want you to do. We would like everybody to be like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they model it, and we uplift it for other folks to see.
The other thing I would tell you is we don't do. Some units do it better than others. You were telling me earlier about recognizing the best warrior competition winners. There's fine. Look for opportunities. I would tell leaders at all levels, look for opportunities. Competition is awesome, and you don't have to have a formal competition, and it doesn't take a lot of resources to have competitions at the platoon, company, battalion level, and I would say that those promote people. Our troopers want to be challenged; they really do.
That's great. I do want to switch gears with you for a second here and talk about a little bit about your career and your experience. So you were a command sergeant major at division, corps, and force comm level. And I'm, just for the audience here, I was very fortunate to meet you in 2013. And when we were in Kabul together under 3rd Corps and what became the ISAF Joint Command under General Milley, and so we got to have an office just down the wooden hallway from each other and spend some time together, which I really appreciated. But what about leading and being a command sergeant major at those higher levels do people just really not understand until they're able to experience it or get some insight firsthand?
I think the biggest things at that level are everything takes a little bit more time to affect change. It takes more time, and the other thing that I wasn't predicting, especially when my easiest, I will tell you, my hardest leadership transitions were from battalion to brigade. That was the first time when I went to brigade, when I became a brigade command sergeant major. That's the first time in my Army career that I realized I did not know everything that was going on in my unit, and I had to get comfortable with it. Yeah, I had I thought at the battalion level, I had a pretty good idea of everything, most of the stuff that was going on in the organization. But when I went to the brigade level, I realized that, wow, this is a big organization. I was in a brigade, but I did not know how big a brigade was.
Yeah, commanders echo that when they move from battalion to brigade. They say, it's the last. In fact, Scott Shaw, Colonel Shaw, he'll command a brigade. He said battalion's the last level of leadership where you know a soldier's name in the dark and or his voice and that they know yours. And that at brigade it's a system of systems, and you're tweaking models up there with a lot less interaction than you have at battalion level. So I've heard that many times.
And then the next, and so then going from brigade to division was not that hard. Going from division to the corps, I mean, it was basically I was doing the same thing at the corps as I was doing at the division, just a little bit greater scale, and then the next big leadership jump at Force Com was I had no clue. It was it's a big organization, and to have an impact, and you have to figure out where you can make the impacts, and so it came from what are the commander's priorities, and I'd take the commander's priorities at almost every level of leadership that I would, from the battalion up, and I would write those down, and I would say, okay, what efforts do I make to feed these command priorities? And so I would work that. But I think one of the things I would tell senior NCOs at the division and above level, and I told the person that replaced me, Sergeant Major Smith, I said, the one thing I'll tell you is what you won't be prepared for is the demand on your time. There'll be a lot of people trying to tug at you for your time, and you have to ration it. You got to figure out what's important, who's important, and who you should be engaging, and who you shouldn't be engaging, or you don't need to engage. So I think the demand on your time, I think most people don't understand how much our senior leaders are pulled, how many different directions they get pulled. And if you allow yourself to get pulled away, you can lose focus. So I always tried to stay focused on the commander's priorities and how I thought I could best help the organization.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did you do as much battlefield circulation at FORSCOM as you did in Kabul in 2013?
I did. So I did, and it was different though. So I mean, FORSCOM, not necessarily battlefield, because we didn't go out. I did not go. If you're talking about overseas battlefield circulation,
I really mean around the country to visit bases and whatnot.
Yes, it was a lot of travel. It was probably 2, 3, 4 days a week, 3 weeks a month, and then a week in the headquarters. And then it was to go visit organizations. It was Army staff type things. One thing at the FORSCOM level that I realized was you can't make any huge changes no huge changes without having buy-in from other organizations, TRADOC, the Army staff. So it had to be a team, a collaborative effort at the FORSCOM level. But I enjoyed Kabul, and that deployment was very very rewarding as far as being able to help troopers. And I think at the division and corps level, being able to get out and see troopers, I would take that, and I could go places that the commander could not. And I could also bring, so commanders have so much going on. They don't get to go any one place and stay there for a long period of time. So, but I could. So I could go inject, and then I could come back. And sometimes I would come back and brief the commander on what I saw. and other times I would come back and just go talk to the staff. Because what I would tell senior NCOs, especially at the level, at the division and above, well, even at the battalion, at all levels, I would say you don't need your commander telling them that you're the command sergeant major and that the staff should support you. I think if you have some things and you show value to the staff, I mean, and if you get the staff to take on your the things you see and the things that you want to do, I mean, you're doing pretty good. And I tried to make myself an extension to the staff, and it wasn't always easy, especially in Kabul with that headquarters, because it was not only a joint headquarters, but it was a multinational headquarters. And the other thing that I realized is at the division level, I realized I couldn't go to every meeting. I don't know if you remember the meetings that we had in Kabul. You know, you have to be humble a little bit. I mean, I would go in and there wouldn't be a chair for me when we first got there. Remember that? And I would just go sit in the back corner. Right? And then at the end, at the end of the meeting, I would say, "Hey, sir, I got a couple things." And General Milley would always, he would always say, "Sure, Sergeant Major." And so as a command sergeant major, you have to show that you have value. And so I would try to provide some insights. And there were so many meetings there that I would go to the chief and say, I would just say, "Hey, sir, what are the topics for the meetings?" And he would tell me what they are, and I would, sometimes I would say, "Okay, I'm going to go to that one. Hey, do you think is there any value in me attending this meeting?" And so I don't know if you remember, but General Milley liked to have the meetings a little bit smaller, because then you could really get some stuff done.
That's right.
And I would only come into the parts of the meeting where I thought I could offer some type of valuable insight, and I would bring my folding chair in, and I would stay for that part of the meeting, and then I'd leave. And,
right.
That's right. I mean, so you can't go to all the meetings, and I think what you bring, if you show value and you show interest, I mean, eventually the staff officers will start coming to you before they start briefing the commander, because they want your insights from being out on the battlefield and seeing what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like what I observed about your leadership there and your time there was that you were, like you said before, your extension of the commander, but then also you were covering blind spots, going to places that, like you said, he couldn't, whether that's an outpost or maybe that's a section he had no idea about, or it's a nation that's only got a portion of, a very small portion of soldiers there, but you're able to go and talk and get a sense of what's really happening. I do want to ask you about, let's say, battlefield circulation. So, you're going out to a company-sized outpost, say an RC East somewhere, and they know you're coming. You fly in, and you get off the helicopter. You meet the leaders. You go and you sit down. What's the goal of the conversation? What are you trying to get out of them to understand? What are you trying to do for them? What was your approach when you visited those places?
Yeah, the first thing I really just I wanted to know what their mission was, and what their mission was, what resources they had. Did they have the resources that they needed to conduct the mission? And the resources is just not material; it's also personnel, and what else did they need? Where could they use some help? And then I looked at and was their understanding of the mission the same as their leaders at the battalion, brigade, and higher levels, and if they knew what they were doing fit in. And really, I didn't look at as much what they were doing is how they were doing certain things. And I really honed in on things that we have a lot of commanders looking at the offensive operations and and a lot of people are looking at offensive operations. Some of the things that I looked at, though, were also areas that others might not. And so I looked hard at force protection. I looked hard at insider threat. We had a lot. Insider threat was a large challenge for us when we were there. And I looked at those, and I looked to find out where training gaps might be for those organizations before they came in. And then because we were responsible for RSOI, the training, the in-theater RSOI training. And so I took those things back and tried to help shape the RSOI training. I also took information back and sent it back to the CTCs and spoke with the command sergeant majors at those CTCs that were preparing organizations to come over, and then units that were coming over into a rotation and preparing some things for them so they would be better prepared. That's kind of where I was. That's kind of where I was focused.
Yeah, I remember the RSOI bit. I remember having conversations with you about that and that being a focus. That's great. So when Sergeant Major, when you think back over the course of your career, when you think about the NCOs that you looked up to, who do you have the most respect for? Who stands out as a person that you said, I really want to, I can take a lot from this person, and you kind of let that person shape who you become?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many, I would say, and it's just not NCO. So, but the number one NCO that my biggest mentor role, I had a couple. Marvin Hill, Sergeant Major Hill, was huge. He was somebody I could always call or shoot a note to, and it would be immediate, and it was always good, solid, sage advice and practical. It was always very practical. And then Sergeant Major Cliff West, Ron Reiling. I mean, I had also peers, Alonzo Smith and John White. Those guys were awesome to have around. And commanders too. I mean, I learned things from every commander that I worked with. And, Colonel Kandarian, Jeff Buchanan, or General Buchanan, General Hickman, and they're all so different. And so you get different things from, General Milley. You get so many things, and they're so different.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about, and I want to ask you, particularly because you have the ability, from what I've observed by working with you, to be at a level like Force Comm or Core, but not separated from the tactical fight, if that makes any sense. Like I see you as a soldier through and through, no matter what level you are serving at, and not everybody can achieve that. But when you think about a lesson that you would impart on the soldier on the ground right now, if you could inject one lesson into the soldiers out there, what would that be?
Become a master of your craft, and I mean, that's the important thing. I think that's one of the most important things. I mean, just master at every level, master your craft. Too many times we get focused on, I never had the intention of being the Force Comm Command Sergeant Major. I never thought I would even be a Command Sergeant Major. Even as a young soldier, I wasn't interested in seeing the first sergeant. Until one day I was looking at him every day when he shaved to get ready to go to work. And so master your job. A lot of times we get caught up on, hey, what's next for me? What am I doing next? The best way to and I would answer people when they say, hey, well, what's the best way for me to get promoted? So that's not the question you should be asking yourself. The question you should be asking yourself is, what do I need to do to be better at the job I have right now? And if you do that job and you get that good, then the promotion will follow.
All right, Sergeant Major. I'd like to ask you what ways you think officers, like particularly staff officers, could maximize the talent of the NCOs that they have on their team.
Sure. And I don't think it's any different than any other type unit. The the staff's a unit, and we got to make those build the team, know your people, communicate with them individually and collectively, understand their personal and professional goals, and provide them with realistic and measurable areas to focus on. I think oftentimes, staff officers in particular are trying to figure out what they're supposed to do, and they lose sight on what they need their non-commissioned officers to do. And non-commissioned officers don't typically get trained on how to be staff NCOs. And then leveraging the operations sergeants major and CSM, as well as the first sergeant. Engage those senior leaders. Staff officers need to engage those senior NCOs to help them. I mean, it's I think that's important, and probably the only time you can get everybody on your staff team together is during PT, and that's a lot of times the staff does not do PT together on a routine basis, and I think that's a huge missed opportunity. And then for then one thing I'd tell the majors that are attending ILE, and I know they have this concern, but your sergeant major, your command sergeant major, and your sergeant major are just as worried about you as you are about who you're going to draw when you come to them. So relationships are huge. And then I would tell all staff officers, I mean, use your senior NCOs, especially your command sergeant major. The command sergeant major can do two things for a staff NCO. That command sergeant major can provide, because he or she sits in the meetings with the commander, and so he can provide you that command sergeant major can provide you insights to what the commander's thinking about, what he or she is considering, and they can also provide access to the commander. So I would have staff officers come talk to me, and I could provide them insight. But then sometimes if I didn't have the answer, maybe I would just ask the commander, and then I would get back to them and say, hey, this is the answer. And then they wouldn't have to go through a planner who's a major, doesn't typically get direct access on a routine basis to the commander. There's a lot of wickets to go through. But that major can come up and talk to the CSM.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good COA. I sometimes think that the officers on a staff become solitary professional problem solvers, and as soon as something pops up, it's their job to jump right on it and just run and go with it, and they don't pick their heads up and look around the room to see all the talented people, NCOs in particular, who can help them with the problem. There's like he's the land and ammo guy, he's the DTS guy, and this is that guy, and that's all they focus on. But we really can maximize the NCOs that are on the team.
Yeah, and I think it just comes to know your people, and that's one of the most important things. I mean, we're in a business. The Army's a business of people, and it takes people to solve the problems, and no one person can do it. And so it's about teamwork.
Absolutely. And so, Sergeant Major, I want to close out with a really important question. You mentioned earlier that the role of the commander, the company battery troop level is one of the most important ones and the hardest job here in the Army. Today, what is the most important role that a first sergeant can play for his or her commander?
The most important role the first sergeant can play is being an inspirational role model and a trainer. And I think that can almost cover everything. So especially you have to lead by example. It starts as being a sergeant in everything you do. And then you have to be a trainer. And the first sergeant and NCOs, as when I talk about trainer, someone that focuses on making others better. I mean, it's really about making others better, not yourself. And that's what I look towards, is helping others be better than in organizations. Help them be better. I mean, that kind of covers everything.
That role is so important. I'm spending a lot of time, mental energy lately, and also discussions in the unit, just trying to scope the landscape of requirements and tasks and responsibilities that the company commander and first sergeant have to work through, because it all descends on their level. It's the first level of command, and so we've been focusing on trying to help them at least prioritize, and in the CSA's and the Secretary's initiative of accepting prudent risk in the areas that we can, and focusing on operational readiness. We're trying to do that at the company level to say, focus on this. We're going to accept some risk in this area, because I know that it's just all piling on them. But that team, that commander first sergeant team is, I happen to agree with you. It is one of the most difficult, but also one of the most important relationships in our Army today.
I would go and I would tell you, if you draw those two triangles and you look at the resources and requirements, with the battalions and the brigades have a huge amount of resources and fewer requirements, and the company has fewer resources and all the requirements. And then I would ask the staff, how can you keep the number of requirements down? And then I would ask the company command teams, how can you increase your resources? And you increase your resources by leveraging the individuals in your organization. And who are your the first sergeant can't run every program. The first sergeant can't run every program. He or she can't run the Army Body Composition program. He or she can't run the schools program. He and she can't run all the different the profile, the special population PT program. But he or she has people inside that company, if given an additional duty and overseen. It might not be as good as if the first sergeant was personally supervising it, executing that program, but it's a lot better than not doing it. And so how do you leverage special duties? I learned a lot from the special duties I had. I was a re-enlistment NCO as a staff sergeant in a company, and I was also a special I was the Army Body Composition Program NCO in another company, and I learned how to do staff stuff. That's how you train your soldiers on the line, how to do staff work.
Well, Sergeant Major, there's a handful of topics we could continue to talk about, and I could pick your brain on. I personally appreciate that you taking the time to chat this morning, and I'm lucky that this isn't the only chat we've had about the role of the NCO and leadership and your experience. So I'm very fortunate for that. But thank you for taking the time here to share your experience and your insight, and thank you for investing into and then caring for our soldiers every day of your career and continuing afterward. You've made, and I've gotten to watch it. You made a significant and personal impact across many formations, and when the folks that I talk to that know you say that you are the type of NCO we need more of in this Army, and so I would just want to thank you for that, and just tell you that you made a difference.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's been an honor. It was an honor to serve for 34 years. I really didn't understand how much of a blessing it was early in my career, but as I started, getting a little longer in the tooth, I really understood what an honor it was to be able to help lead America's Army, and presence matters, and being with the troops matters, and so what you do when you're there matters even more. So I appreciate what you're doing. I really envy you where you are in your career, and all the troopers out there, and thanks for what you do every day to keep us safe.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sergeant Major. All right, enjoy your Friday, which will hopefully include cycling and relaxing a little bit.
It will include recovery and preparing for tomorrow's cycling activities.
Gotcha. We caught you on your off day. Good. All right. We'll be sure to talk soon. I'd love to have you on again, and we can explore some of these. I'm sure there are a ton of questions out there people would want to send in and ask you directly, so maybe we can set that up. But thanks so much for your time, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Have a great weekend.
That really was just the surface of all the topics that Command Sergeant Major Schroeder could go into. The Army is lucky to have had him as one of their leaders, and I'm thankful that he took a moment away from his wife and from cycling to share his perspective. Only 2 more episodes left in Season 1 of the Military Leader Podcast. What will happen after Episode 10? Well, I'm not sure. I am thoroughly enjoying the conversation so far, and putting this podcast together has been quite a journey. I've got a few big events coming up at work, though, and I may not have time and be able to invest the many hours it takes to put the show together. So I may be asking for help very soon. If you have podcasting or audio editing experience and might want to get involved in producing the Military Leader Podcast, then keep an ear out for details on the website and in following episodes. All right, for next time, I am going to share the very first interview I conducted for the podcast and the only interview so far that has been in person. Episode 9 will feature a buddy of mine and a leader whose influence network reaches distant circles of our Army. Lieutenant Colonel Matt Hardman joins the podcast to share his insight from 20 years in the infantry, as well as his experience from battalion command and as an observer controller at the National Training Center. He had the honor of serving as Bronco 07, which is the brigade staff trainer and advisor to the rotational unit brigade commander going through NTC. He has seen lessons learned the hard way, and consequently has a realistic perspective about what training for combat should look like. Here's a short clip of my upcoming conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Matt Hardman.
Yeah, everybody wants to be a starter. We don't need starters. We need finishers. We need people that are highly competent at what they do. And there's no there's no magic pill. There's no substitute other than putting in the work and doing the reps. Mm-hmm. And you look at the special mission units, and they're really, really good. And they didn't get an injection. Having gotten to watch them at brag work and downrange work, they put in the work, mm-hmm. and they do the little stuff right. And I certainly influenced by playing sports, and my soccer coach at Davidson, a guy named Matt Spear, and I talked to him right before I went to command. And his advice to me was he's like, hey, I really respected him a lot. And his thing was like, hey, he's like, the thing I learned, I stopped worried about recruiting the best talent. And I started worrying about recruiting people with the right mindset. Because from mindset, mm-hmm. You'll get capacity, capacity and skill, mm-hmm. not the other way around. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that. And Matt was the kind of guy playing for that we could beat a team 5-0. And at the end of the game, hey, what are the 3 things we're going to improve? Mm-hmm. And that's the mindset. You did well. Okay, and what next? Yeah. And I think for our Army, I think that we got to stoke that inner drive to just constantly be better.
Yeah. Look for that episode next time on the Military Leader Podcast. I know you'll enjoy it. Remember, the views expressed here do not represent the Department of Defense or the U.S. government in any way. I want to thank you so much for listening. And until next time, lead well.